Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a source text that does something absolutely wild. It takes an ancient, familiar religious debate and completely flips it on its head, turning it into a structured, falsifiable machine. We are looking at a document that treats these age-old claims not as matters of blind devotion, but as mechanical operations that can be tested, verified, and potentially broken.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the historical stalemates, the 3 dots of the claim, the real deck analogy, the clock mechanism, falsifiability and break conditions, and finally, the new standard. Let's get right to it.
Section 1. The historical belief stalemate, escaping the loop of faith versus skepticism.
For centuries, literally centuries, this debate has been stuck on repeat. It's an endless loop of belief versus disbelief. The believer asserts that it's real, and the skeptic demands proof. But this model proposes a radical shift in the rules of engagement. What if belief isn't the required entry fee anymore? Instead, what if we ask a purely functional question? Does a specific key actually perform its function?
This is a massive paradigm shift. The proposed shift isn't from skepticism to belief at all. It is from belief language to a defined test with hard success and failure conditions. Think about that. You don't have to change your entire worldview just to see if a physical key turns a lock, right? The author is making it crystal clear that we are stepping completely away from theology and right into the realm of mechanics and verification. Moving on to Section 2, the 3 dots of the claim, mapping the biblical trajectory.
To really understand this mechanism, the source material maps out a horizontal trajectory across time. Think of it as 3 distinct dots. First, we start with the planted seed, way back in the beginning. Genesis chapter 3 leaves us with an unfinished take-and-give relationship regarding the tree of life. Then, fast forward to the 1st century. Here, Jesus crystallizes this exact dilemma with the historical claim, I give sight. And finally, the 3rd dot is in the future. The book of Revelation presents the writer as the resolution, the actual point of verification. The argument here is that a claim and its reveal cannot occupy the exact same position in time. You absolutely need this horizontal sequence.
From that unresolved relation in the beginning, the author extracts a hyper-strict, purely reciprocal rule. If it takes, it gives. If it gives, it takes. That's it. That is the tree of life axiom. This simple rule is the engine of the whole thing. If this single rule fails, the entire machine just grinds to a halt. Without a real take-give relation anchored in the beginning, the proposed mechanism simply doesn't work.
Section 3. The real deck analogy. Labels versus real reveals.
I love this part because it makes a highly abstract concept super relatable. Imagine you're sitting down at a poker table. Let's call this World A. But here's the catch. Every single card in the deck is blank white. One player looks at their blank cards and claims, I've got a royal flush. Another player yells, I've got 4 aces. But since every card is totally blank, there is absolutely no discriminator. If the identity of Christ is just a label, it's exactly like playing poker with this all-white deck. Words like true and false become completely weightless. They only exist through persuasion or authority, but nothing can actually be proven objectively.
Now, step into World B. In World B, we're playing with a real deck. Here, when you show your cards, it provides verifiable information that actually discriminates and settles claims objectively. The cards have independent properties, regardless of who is yelling the loudest. And that is exactly what this model attempts to do. It's putting Christ in a world where the claim isn't just some inherited label, but a highly testable mechanism with a real, objective reveal.
Section 4. The clock mechanism explained. The engine of the lock and key claim.
So, how does this engine actually work? The author takes that Genesis take-and-give rule we just talked about and maps it onto a literal clock dial. You see those blue and red sections? They represent the 2 halves of that reciprocal rule. It's an intricate, closed-loop structure designed to pinpoint exact arrival coordinates, specifically targeting what's mapped out as blue 1 at dial 12.11. Basically, it's forcing the theology to act like a strict mathematical equation instead of just persuasive rhetoric.
To operate, this mechanism relies on a sequence of 7 precise steps. It starts with a single loop for the take-give relation, moves to a crossover tick at 12 o'clock, hits an arrival tick, defines door ownership using that tree rule, sets up defined break conditions, keeps a falsifiability ledger, and ultimately forms one complete step-by-step operation. Listen, this doesn't just rely on saying the magic word Christ. This clock has to mathematically tick through every single one of these steps to work. It functions as a key that claims it can open what opponents cannot shut and shut what opponents cannot open.
Section 5. Falsifiability and break conditions. Inviting the pressure test.
Here is where things get really fascinating. Any theory is only scientifically or logically valid if it can actually fail. So the million-dollar question is, how do you break this key? If you were to bring in a famously strict philosopher, someone like Bertrand Russell, and make him the referee, how would he go about disproving this? This framework practically hands him a hammer and invites him to take a swing.
Well, the source material actually gives us the literal break conditions. In this framework, you don't get to argue about your feelings or beliefs. To break the key, you must mathematically or logically do one of three things. Number 1, demonstrate that the tree rule does not hold. Number 2, demonstrate that the clock mapping does not perform its claimed operation. Or number 3, produce an earlier rival mechanism that does the exact same job and takes the key position. That's it. Those are the rules of the game.
Because the model lists those exact, specific ways it can be falsified, the old arguments just fall flat. Simple dismissals like, oh, that sounds religious, or you're just delusional, or I simply don't believe you, no longer open this specific door. Saying it's just a myth doesn't work here. The mechanism is sitting right there on the table, waiting to be pressure tested. The critic is forced to stop attacking the label and start attacking the mechanism itself.
Which brings us to our final part. Section 6, the new intellectual standard. Examination, not deference.
The author warns us that our inherited categories basically trap both sides of the debate. Look at the typical reflexes. The believer's reflex is often to just blindly defend the inherited label, completely overlooking the actual verification point being proposed. On the flip side, the skeptic's reflex is to dismiss the whole proposal as faith or myth before they've even bothered to examine the falsifiable mechanism in front of them. Both sides are completely missing the lock. This new intellectual standard demands actual, rigorous engagement. To step up to this standard, you need to be able to state the tree rule correctly. You need to explain why that beginning in Genesis is even needed. You have to be able to state the clock's break conditions. And then you have to actively try to reopen it with a real counterexample, or try to shut it with a valid rival mechanism. The point is, you don't lose intellectual rigor by testing it. You lose rigor by dismissing it blindly without learning how the machine works.
So, we leave you with this final massive frame shift from the source material. It's time to stop debating labels and start examining the lock. Ask yourself, can this proposed key actually be broken? It's a compelling challenge that completely upends the traditional way we argue about ancient texts. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. What do you think? Can you break it?